Exodus 3 gives an extraordinary account of God's redemption of his people. We saw in chapter 1 the oppression of the children of Israel. In chapter 2, the introduction of Moses and the life he had for 40 years and being trained to succeed the throne of Egypt. But God had his own plan. He had to flee, and now we see Moses in this chapter tending the flock of his father-in-law in Midian, which he had been doing for 40 years. What a come down this was for Moses. But here in the wilderness, the Lord showed up to Moses in a burning bush, which was not consumed by the fire. Here is my question. God, the great I am, appeared in a little bush, not a huge tree. Has anyone got any idea why this may be? Feel free to answer. Any one of our scholars on here? I see it as God being, although he's mighty, he's the powerful God, he is humble also. But what a sight this was, as Moses said, it was a great sight, and stopped to look. Then God calls to him. Now, when God saw that Moses stopped to look, then God spoke. Are we going to stop to hear, to see God? Stop to listen, to see God, to see what God has to do. What is your burning bush this morning? Then God calls to Moses in verse 5 and asks him out of the midst of the bush, take off thy shoes, for where thou standing is holy ground. In Patriarch and Prophets, page 152, Ellen G. White says, humility and reverence should characterize the deportment of all who come in the presence of God. In the name of Jesus, we may come before him with confidence, but we must not approach him with the boldness of presumption as though he were on a level with ourselves. In verse 6 to 8, God introduced himself to Moses and told him he has seen the affliction and heard their cry and know their sorrow after 80 years. How long you might have been asking God for something, pleading him. This to me shows that God does hear and knows our sorrows and our need. But God in his own time appointed Moses as the Redeemer, who he would use to bring the children of Israel out of Egypt. What a difference in Moses. A man who committed murder is now reluctant to go, although he had to flee from Egypt of the good life. He seems settled to stay where he was. Maybe he had given up on life, too old, no power, no a lowly shepherd. How many of us may feel that way? God does not call you for your ability. It is not as important as your availability. As you can see how God wanted to use Moses here. But God said to him, I will be with thee. God can use anyone to do his work. In verse 14 and 15, Moses asked, verse 13, who shall I? And he said, certainly I will be with thee. And Moses said unto God, behold, when I come unto the children of Israel, and shall say unto them, the God of your father sent me unto you. And they shall say unto me, what is his name? I mean, how did Moses, know this is what the people would say to him? So you can see his reluctance not to go. And God said, I am that I am. Here is God establishing himself of who he is. This was to let the people know it was God who would be taking them out of Egypt and not Moses. He was using Moses to do that for him. It is said, what is in a name? As you see in Exodus 2, verse 10, Moses was given the name as he was drawn out of the water. But here we see that God is saying, I am. So it goes to show that a name is important. And God was going to use Moses, the one drawn out of the water, to take the people out of Egypt. And this also shows that God had a plan from then. It is said that Jesus was the burning bush. From the following verses, I will quote to you. John 6:35 said, I am the bread of life. John 8, verse 12, I am the light of the world. John 10, verse 7, I am the door of the sheep. John 10, verse 11, I am the good shepherd. John 11, verse 25, I am the resurrection and the life. John 14, verse 6, I am the way, the truth, and the life. John 15, verse 5, I am the vine, ye are the branches.